live. It is MLB playoff time right here on First Pitch on WagerTalk TV, a 7-day-a-week baseball betting show. Guys, I'm fired up. I'm really happy to have you guys here with me. Brian Leonard, Dave Koken, Steve Merrill. I'm Andrew McGinnis. Look, we've had a good season, successful between all four of us. But I said to Dave on the phone today, tired of talking about these bottom feeder teams, tired of talking about some of these that didn't have a chance. These are the real games now, guys. These are the ones that matter. Dave Koken, how are you?
I'm good. Excited about the playoffs beginning. Going to have action every day for the next few days. Then there'll be a little break, and then be playing every day again as they move on past the wild card round. It's exciting. No more man on second in extra innings excitement. They go back to the regular extra innings. And you know what? And I'm a traditionalist for the most part. I really like that extra inning thing. I hope they put it in permanently. I don't need to see, even in the playoffs, I don't need to see 16 inning games. It's a lot of fun. But anyway, it's going to be a blast. I've got one play up, and we did a little extension on the usual $9 Monday. So the play is up for $9. The one play I have today in baseball. I haven't put up any football yet, but 8-1 in college football. It's been a phenomenal start to the season. The golf's going well. I'm ahead in the NFL. I'm pretty pleased right now, and hopefully we'll keep on going in the right direction. How about you, Andrew?
Yeah, for myself, a 5% play up in the MLB today for the first day of the playoffs. So, it's not something I was searching for, not something I went on my way to grab, but a spot that I really liked here today and didn't want to waste any time. Had a successful season for me. I went in with the MLB telling myself I was going to play, 1 or 2 games maybe each day and pick my spots. Ended up being the number one guy at WagerTalk this season. And that's, dealing with guys like yourselves. So it's a privilege to be up there with you guys in the rankings. And, the real work starts now. But as you can tell by how excited I was earlier talking to you, Dave, and just in general, these games mean something now, and really excited to handicap these. And if I'm not mistaken, Dave, 5-0 for you to end the 2019 MLB playoffs.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that. I don't play ever. I think people who've watched this show know I'm not a big volume guy at all. I only made 5 postseason plays last year, and I won them all. And there'll be more this year because there are more games than there were in it's most games there's ever been in the playoffs will be this year. So I'll have more than 5 plays, but it's still not going to be high volume. But if that's the type of handicapper you like, a low volume guy who's very selective, was 5-0 last year in the postseason, and I'd like to start 1-0 this season.
I think by the way, is all that really matters. So nobody can argue that, Dave.
No, and by the way, I mentioned the 8-1 in college football. Brian and myself are having a massive tug of war in college football because Brian's 7-1. So if you played all, and I don't know that we've even been on the same play yet.
I don't think we have, no.
So between the two of us, we're 15-2 in college football. And, of course, Brian in baseball, well, I mean, over the past few years, if you just played his plays in baseball, your bankroll is a lot more than it used to be.
Yeah, good save.
Tell us more.
Brian. Triple bankrolls over the past 3 seasons to MLB with your clients. Brian, I've gotten to know you over the past season here talking on MLB. One thing I've learned from you, it's chip by chip, day by day, go through the season. And that's how you do it. Get that great return on investment. That's just a great stat. I love as a host when people send me streaks, short term, let's say a 9-1, 10-1. But when you can tell me you've had, in the past 3 years, you've tripled your clients' bankrolls. Certainly something that really sticks out. And same thing for myself. I'm promoting my 5% play, Brian. I'm not telling people my record. I want to tell people I hit 64% winners this season because I think that's a little more viable than the actual numbers itself, the amount of plays. First of all, congratulations, Brian. And how you doing? How you feeling heading into today?
Hey, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I appreciate the nice comments. Yeah, really excited about baseball. I know I'll be glued to the television every day now. In these 16 games, betting live is going to be tremendous. I'm so excited. My wife's on vacation, and I'm actually glad she's on vacation. All day baseball, not just the Indians, all day baseball. I'm so excited. But yeah, I've got actually I have 2 plays up on today's card. And like Dave, I don't put out a lot of plays, so I'm liking today's card. And in football, great football weekend, except for the Houston Texans. That was our 5% play. Led for just about the entire game. Didn't come through for us, but 5-2 overall for the weekend. And as Dave mentioned, 7-1 in college football. I talked about how tough it was to handicap college football now with the virus and all. So my plays will probably be out Thursday or Friday. But heard some news that Tennessee NFL team may have some COVID now. So the NFL have been really good about that up till now. So hopefully it works.
We'll see how they handle it, right? We'll see how they handle it.
It looks like it probably their game and the Vikings game are probably going to get postponed this weekend. There is a decent fit for them in terms of being able to reschedule in weeks 7 and 8.
Right.
But their operations have evidently been shut down until Saturday, so there's no way they can play. And that means the Vikings, despite no tests that have come back positive, I suspect the same thing's going to happen with them. Sucks, but, we can't control it. So,
guys, a fun start to the show already. Brian's going to be watching baseball. His wife's away on vacation. Love to have that comedy to start things off. Steve, don't want to forget about you. Last but certainly not least here. End of the season here is 16-8. But more importantly, like I said, those percentages, 60% on the season. Steve, congratulations. Let's keep that going into the postseason, man.
Yeah, 16-8 the last 24, 33-22 on the season. I'll take that. And it's a 2-month run, basically. If you multiply that by 3, it would have been even better with the full baseball season. 30% return on investment, and that's the one I look at, Andrew, is return on investment. And as you said with Brian, it's like 2.5 times your bankroll in a few years. That's what really matters. The stock market, historically 10% a year with 50% drawdowns occasionally. A CD or money market account right now, 0.5% for the year. So to make 30% on your money in 2 months, not too shabby. And I know all of us have had nice baseball seasons. And I think doing this show has been a large part of it as we feed off each other and become more knowledgeable. And I'm looking forward to seeing some playoff insight from everybody today.
Absolutely.
Well, let's go.
This opportunity. We'll get right into the games here in a second. But welcome to all of you guys joining us here in the chat box. We hope you enjoyed the shows on the weekend with Dave and Matt and the rest of the crew. It is playoff time. And again, like Dave said, I wanted to make sure I do not forget this. These plays have stuck to just $9 for today. First day of the MLB postseason, the wild card games, my 5% play. You can grab that for just $9. I haven't released that many. For the success I've had this MLB season, I think I might have released 3 or 4 all season long. Obviously, it was only a short season, but ready to go here with this one. 4 games, guys. We'll start right with it. Astros, Twins, Greinke Maeda on the mound here. Astros minus 165 current price. Over under is 7.5. I've got some notes here. I'm looking forward to starting to kind of jump in with you guys instead of just throwing it all the way around. But we're going to start around. We'll go around. Start with Brian. Brian Leonard, your thoughts here on this first game, afternoon game here, first pitch. The reason why we're starting the show a little bit earlier today.
Yeah, we've got the world champions against a team who I believe has lost 16 straight playoff games.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yep.
But yet the Twins are a sizable favorite today and in this series. Something that concerns me with Houston, first off, their road record, 9-23 on the road. Don't know if it has the same effect it normally would have with the fans in the stands, but they have not played well on the road. And, one of the things I look at is how these teams have done against winning teams.
Yeah.
Houston has not done well against winning teams. They're 4-13 on the season, whereas Minnesota is 18-12, and Minnesota is one of those teams that is just dominated at home, 24-7 at home, which is why the line is where it is. Greinke is one of those guys that he's been terrific in his career, but his last 7 starts, his average game score was 47. His best start out of those 7 games was 56. When you look at Maeda, his worst start out of his last 7 games was a 56 game score. His average is 65. Dave and I talked early in the season about how much we love the signing of Maeda. That may be the best free agent signing in baseball this year. If it's not, it'd be tough to find something as close to that. But, you got a Minnesota team. The concern I have, if you're playing Minnesota today and they lose, does that start getting in their head that they have to win the next 2 games straight up? after losing 17 straight. And I know it wasn't the same players, and I know it was different years, but still, the fans in Minnesota, very similar to the fans in Cleveland, they don't have real expensive rosters. And so you tend to love the players you have and really stick behind them because they're not the guys that are going to be leaving each and every year, although the Indians are going to lose a couple this year that are really good ball players. But I like Minnesota here. The line is high. Normally I don't like something this high, but I don't want any part of Houston here, a team who, number one, should not have even made the playoffs, and number two, everybody still hates them after what happened. So the world is rooting for Minnesota here.
I see a comment here from Jake saying, on the Twins on the series price, only bet MLB playoffs. For myself, I actually didn't make a side wager on this game, but I did play a series bet on this Twins team. Dave talked about how he had 5 plays last year, went 5-0. I'm going to actually be a lot more low volume in these early games, early rounds in the wild card games versus the rest of the playoffs, just picking my spots on a day in, day out basis. Just because, you look at it, it's like we were talking about off air, Brian, there's a better chance in these shorter series that we could see the dogs bark a little bit. However, at the same time, you get down one game, the next game is an elimination game, and that's just what every single game means something. Dave, like Brian said, we got a team right now, 16 straight postseason losses, not something to really be proud of here. And we talk about Greinke versus Maeda, this matchup. I mean, on paper, looking at the stats, a guy, having a red hot season here, it seems pretty obvious this matchup, who we would like as far as the pitching matchup. Interesting, though, with Greinke, uncharacteristic 5.74 ERA in the last 7 starts. However, not one of his road starts went over the total. I'm looking towards the under in this game, and this is coming from a guy that likes a lot of overs here early on in the postseason.
Well, I'm not getting involved with the total, but I want to go back to Maeda for a moment because Brian and myself did very much agree that this was a terrific signing by the Twins. And I think what he's done this year has lent credence to the thought that he was never used properly by Dave Roberts, who for some reason, didn't trust him. Well, maybe he gets blown up today. I don't know. But, this is only his second postseason start. The Dodgers always just kept sending him to the bullpen. He made a postseason start in his rookie year with the Dodgers and then just rotted in the bullpen in the postseason after that. I think he's really going to be motivated to be pitching in a postseason game on a team that really values him, as the Twins have done. They've made him their number one starter. He is their number one starter above Barrios, who was the main guy going into this season. I think that's just a big confidence boost for a guy who's just a really solid pitcher. The negative numbers on the Astros are clear. They're only 4-8 when Greinke starts this year. Mm-hmm. So as crafty as the maestro is, he's really not having a great season. He's getting by on his ability to mix up pitches and command them pretty well. But his stuff is not as good as it's been. He's starting to get older. He doesn't get the 95 up there anymore. It's all low 90s and then mixing in 80s, and he'll throw a 69-mile-an-hour curveball. Maybe he can fool the Twins, but I think it's a tough lineup for him. The negative numbers of the Astros are almost staggering. I mean, 2-11 on the road against winning teams, 4-13, as Brian mentioned, overall. Greinke, for as good as he's been, has not been a particularly good postseason pitcher in his career. I think it's 3-6, 4.21 in his starts, so he has not been a great postseason pitcher. I think the edges are with the Twins here. You're going to have to pay a premium. I mean, it's not cheap. The odds makers aren't giving away money with this one, but the Twins, on paper, are clearly the right side in this game.
Yeah, we're talking about this Astros team on the road. Minnesota finished the Major League best, 24-7 at home, 2.89 ERA. It's funny, looking at I'm not a huge quote guy, Dave, but I think looking at before a series starts in both MLB, NBA, NHL, the quotes are important and they're very interesting, and it's kind of a cool segue based off what you were saying that Greinke could fool the batters and stuff. Sure. Twins, managers, all of their staff, pitching staff, everybody's quote coming from the locker room. Greinke can do some funny things with the baseball and play tricks on people in ways you normally don't see on a Major League Baseball field. So they're not taking him lightly.
Oh, no, you can't. You can't take a guy like
that. It's interesting. I love that quote, though. He'll do things that you don't usually see on a Major League Baseball field. Like you said, it's just a good segue. He'll do some tricky things. I just think the bats are going to be too much. And
one other note, by the way. Donaldson is off the roster. He'll be taxi squad. He's hurt, and Buxton's not healthy, but he is going to play, as far as I know. So it's not perfect for Minnesota. And of course they've got the pressure of having lost 16 straight playoff games, but they're not facing the Yankees either, and that's been, of course, the big issue for them in the postseason.
Yeah. Steve, I talked about how hot you were during this regular season. How do you start off this MLB postseason? Any action for you here on this early game?
Yeah, no action on this early game, but I'll tell you what, my pitcher projection ratings, which I do for every game, I don't talk about them a lot during the regular season. I kind of look at the big picture stuff since these teams are playing every day, but I really dig into the pitching more, obviously, here in the postseason. I think, as all of us do, pitching's what decides these championships for the most part. Both of my starting pitchers in this game, my projections for the two guys today in the Houston-Minnesota game are the worst of all 8 pitchers today. So I actually think there is some value with the over 7.5 if that plays out. Fairly low total if both pitchers are mediocre today. Minnesota always has the big play capability offensively. I like what you mentioned, Andrew, with that home-road dichotomy with the Twins. How about the Astros? 20-8 at home, 9-23 away. Minnesota 24-7 home, 12-17 away. Maybe the two biggest home-road splits of any teams this year. So that's something interesting to look at. But I'm not playing this series, but I'll tell you, I'd probably lean towards the Astros plus 160 on the money line to win the series, just because I think it could be a toss-up. You talk about Minnesota's inexperience in the postseason, then you got the most experienced team in baseball with Houston. Granted, they can't cheat anymore, and they were below 500 for the 60 games. But in a 3-game, as you said, a best of 3, really a one-and-done here almost. Whoever wins this game is going to be in the driver's seat going forward. I have a bad feeling about going against the Astros right here, so I'm staying off the side in this one, but I would lean towards the over 7.5, as I think both pitchers could be mediocre today.
Yeah, I think it's something worth mentioning about these teams that wouldn't normally be in a playoff spot if it wasn't for the type of situation that we're in this year. In the short season, the bigger playoff format, this, that, and the other thing. And also, Dave, how many times on this show have we had comments in the chat room about, hey, how do you guys take into account a team on the road, or how big of a fan are you of home advantage? And the amount of times we've had that, obviously no fans there and all that stuff, but certain teams, they're still traveling. They're still playing
still at home field.
They're still playing at an away field. They know it. They don't know it. And we've certainly seen it. So, Steve, great point to reiterate that. And also, just real quick before we move on to the next one, I thought it was interesting how Kenta Maeda, I struggle to pronounce his last name, but he just kind of shrugged off the questions about playing the Astros and the history he has with them back when he was with his old team. And, I like that. And I said I'm not a huge quote guy during the regular season, guys, but during this postseason, I read a lot of quotes, and it sounded like he's like, no, my job is to go out there and just pitch a good game, have a good quality first couple innings. He doesn't care about the drama. He doesn't care about, that kind of stuff. And it sounds like to me he's very lasered in. Quick hello to Johnny Outlaw, Amir Johnson, Jake, Terry Edelman, 442 of you guys in this chat room. Do us a favor, hit that like button. Head over to WagerTalk.com. $9 is the price that we're still rolling with here, carrying those prices over from $9 Monday, first day here of the MLB postseason. 1 game down, few more to go here. White Sox, Giolito, A's, Luzardo on the mound, minus 125. White Sox favorite here, 7.5 is the total. Dave, I want to start with you this one, and I'm gonna throw it to you with a little bit of a quote here.
I think the line you gave, what did you say what the line was?
125.
Oh, 120. Okay, I misheard you. I thought you said 145. Yeah, 125 is right.
So everybody's talking about this whole the run they've had against lefties, right? And we've seen the stats, and it's something worth talking about. And I'm listening to it earlier today, and somebody's actually going over the teams that they played with lefties over their last, the remainder of that streak, talking about a team like the Pirates and teams like that. So it's interesting to look at that. But Tim Anderson, he goes, but he's a lefty. We'll take it. Nothing against him. We have been doing well against lefties. I guess they haven't been doing their homework. And then Luzardo says back to that same comment, every pitcher is different, different stuff. So we'll see how my stuff plays against them. It seems like there's already kind of a battle in the media, and everyone's kind of already riding the streak. And as bettors, we talk about the streaks. But now it's the players. Now it's the media asking those questions, Dave.
Well, this is a fun series. The White Sox were a very popular preseason bet to do some stuff this year, and the bettors who took those futures of the White Sox are probably feeling pretty good about themselves right now. Oakland, I thought, was going to be the team to beat in the American League West because I didn't think the Astros were as good as they've been, and that turned out to be a good call. The obvious thing here is the 14-0 by the White Sox against lefties, and you can't dismiss it. I don't care who they were playing against. That's still 14-0 is just absurd. Anderson, his barrel rate against lefties is nuts. Okay, I mean the guy is a superstar, and he's fun to watch as well. I really enjoyed Tim Anderson. Now there are some other numbers here that are worth looking at. Number one, the White Sox were as good as they've done. They're 12-20 facing winning teams this season. That's not very good. But the flip side of that is the Oakland A's had the easiest schedule in baseball. They've only played 6 games all season. 6 out of their 60 games were against winning teams, and they went 2-4 in those 6 games. So it might be that these two teams are both overrated. We'll have to wait and see. That is something I'm definitely considering in terms of the next series for whoever comes out of this series. I think that you might definitely have a chance to catch some value against two teams that maybe aren't as good as some of their numbers would indicate. Giolito, I decided to break him down against the winning teams that he faced. And in those games, the White Sox were 2-5, and I believe he was 0-3. And his numbers really weren't very good. 38 2/3 innings, 31 hits, 23 runs, 20 of them earned. Those aren't great numbers. Luzardo faced 2 teams with winning records all season and lasted a total of 7 2/3 innings, gave up 9 hits and 7 runs. So that, it tends. I think this might be a high-scoring game with the White Sox ability to hit lefties, and Giolito occasionally gets a little bit iffy with his command and starts walking people, and this is not a good team to do that against because the A's are very patient offensively. They get a lot of walks, and the one thing we know about the A's is they might not hit for average, but they can hit the baseball out of the park. And you put men on against this team, and they're going to hurt you. I think that's the play I like in this game is the over 7.5. The downside of that, and why I might consider, and I've got, this game's got a couple hours to still look at it, an hour and a half. Over 4 might be more appealing to me because the bullpen for the A's is so good. I might want to. I'm not real confident in either of the 2 starting pitchers. And I think there's a good chance you get some runs early. I'm not so sure you get them late in this game. So I don't think it's going to end up in my card, but we'll see if I'm right or not. We'll call it a lean to the over 4 in the first 5 innings.
It's interesting, Dave, because we've been talking on the show about full game overs first half, but with these teams, a little bit different here. And I like that exact play. I like that exact spot here. And just a quick little rant. I think that everyone. One week to the next, here we go. A couple days ago, it's the regular season. Now it's the postseason. All of a sudden, it's under galore. It's lower totals. It's, these aces are on the mound. Watch out. We're going to get 2-1 games. And, I think that during this COVID-19 period, during this different time in sport, it's going to be a different feeling. Do you think obviously the guys know it's the playoffs, but do you guys think versus a regular season, these guys are going out there feeling that much different? Do you think the atmosphere is that much different inside the ball field?
100%.
And there's going to be a couple banners lifted, music. So I'll just finish my rant. I mean, not for the players, but atmosphere wise, the longer at bats. I think the A's to kind of extend your point, the A's might not hit for average, but they're going to make Giolito work. They are going to have long at bats. They're going to grind everything out. And I think that the public, the general people, are going to overreact to these aces on the mound, and we're going to see lower totals, I think, that are going to be worth taking advantage of. I like that first 5 to over, just like Dave does. I think it's a great spot for it. All the talk about the White Sox versus lefties, like Dave said, you can't ignore it. And I wasn't saying anything bad about it. I was just saying it was interesting, the teams that they ended off that run with. I wouldn't talk anybody off the full game either. I think we see some runs in this game. Interesting matchup, and I think two teams that might be a little bit overrated here, Steve.
Yeah, I think Dave had my notes for this game because he brought up some excellent points. I also like the over here, guys. I was going to point that out. I mentioned the last game that those two pitchers were last in my pitcher projection ratings. Well, 5th and 6th, right above them, are these two pitchers today. So I once again think there's value over 7.5 for that reason. I was debating full game versus first 5 over 4. Now, both teams do have good bullpen statistics for the season, so the first 5 inning makes a lot of sense for that reason here. But, Dave, I love the winning record. It's something I forgot to mention, guys, with the Astros game. The Astros 4-13 this year against 500, better than 500 teams. And it definitely applies to both these teams. And keep in mind, the Oakland A's played only the Western teams in both leagues.
Right.
No games against 6 of the other 7 AL playoff teams in the Central and East this year. And they played only the Padres and Dodgers. Those are the only 2 winning teams. That's where that 2-4 record came against. It's that simple. So very weak schedule. So you got to worry about those bullpen numbers a little bit for that reason. Maybe that bullpen's not as strong. And then also, don't forget when Chapman got injured September 6th, the A's are just 8-11 down the stretch since he's been injured, their third baseman. So definitely some reasons maybe to fade the A's. It's a pick-em price, -110 in the series. I'd probably lean towards the White Sox for that reason in the series as well. And I think Chicago could be a little overrated going forward as well. These are not two teams I've got going deep in the playoffs, but I'd probably lean White Sox in the series at pick 'em. But I like the over 4 first 5 or the over 7.5. By the way, about the left-handed starters, Chicago 14-0, Oakland 11-3. They hit left pretty well this year. So I think a lot of things point to the over here, as we've all talked about.
Of course, they're not facing a lefty here.
Yeah.
You can find Steve on Twitter at Steve Merrill, also an MLB Moneymaker up at WagerTalk.com. Brian at B Leonard Sports. Before you say it, I don't know if you're going to say it, but I have a number that you might have already known here. White Sox league leaders in WRC plus here against lefties, 143. Again, stuff you can't ignore, Brian. That's for sure.
Here's your question. The White Sox lead the league at 143 and lead Major League Baseball. Who's number 2 against lefties?
No, it's Oakland.
I guess maybe Oakland, I was going to say.
Yeah.
No, the Detroit Tigers.
Oh, that's right. I was only thinking playoff teams. Sorry.
Hey, Brian, does that make you think since they're in the same division, they face some equally weak lefties maybe?
That's a good point. Yeah, I didn't think of that.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying at the top.
But you were talking, Steve was talking about Oakland with a good record versus lefties. They're only a 93 WRC plus against lefties. So it's a situation where they're getting good pitching in those games. That's why they're winning. It's not because of the hitting. The hitting hasn't been very good. But I don't understand why Oakland is using Luzardo. Number 1, he's a lefty. Number 2, he hasn't pitched in 10 days. This is a guy who his last start was on the 19th against San Francisco. That's a long way to wait to get this guy some action, and you're putting him in your first game of a 3-game series against a team who rocks lefties. I don't understand that. And it was mentioned that Giolito against good teams hasn't done as well. Well, his last 3 games against teams in the playoffs, Cleveland, he has a 64, Minnesota 55, Minnesota 54. So he's held his own against the teams as of late that are in the playoffs, although, Cleveland's offense isn't very good, but Minnesota's is pretty good offense, at least on paper. They don't hit the home runs like they did last year. But, Oakland's usually the team I root for when it comes to the playoffs because they have the low payroll and they play in a shitty stadium. And I like to root for those type of teams, but I just don't think the A's match up very well against the White Sox in this series. So I didn't do any series bets, but I think the White Sox was a legitimate number to look at there if you are looking for the series bet.
What I find funny about this series, guys, is that anybody that I see talking about this series, they are all over it. They love their side. And then, anybody that's just like, I'm not really sure, it's an iffy series. It's just one or the other. I mean, you either love a certain side or you're just a little bit here. And it sounds like for us, looking at all these numbers here, you can kind of make your own opinion based off these stats. And it's one of those statistics type series. Next one we're going to get to, guys.
Hey, Andrew,
Blue Jays.
Sorry to cut you, Andrew. Let me mention one last thing on Oakland about them maybe being a little overrated. One other stat I forgot: 6-1 in extra inning games this year, guys. So that makes them just 30 and 23 in all other games. And we talked about all those ninth inning. Remember all those grand slams and ninth inning walk-offs early in the season? 8-11 since Chapman got hurt, 6-1 in extra innings. Anyway, I just meant to mention that earlier. A lot of things that can make you think the A's were not as good. 2-4, as Dave said, against winning teams. So we'll see what happens. But I like the White Sox, like Brian, at -110 to win the series.
And regarding those first two games, I'm not sure if you guys do these bets ever. And myself and Matt Josephs and Andy Lang have been doing a lot of props at WagerTalk.com and Sports Memo, and doing a prop show. I've been known to bet the first inning no score. And I've had some success over the past 3-4 years doing that in the playoffs. And, some might say, hey, it's one inning. How can you control that? That's why I want to bet a full 9. Well, it's a playoff game. Obviously, we do have the stud pitchers out there, and the tension is high to start things off. So get a few good prices. If you can get a good number on the first 2 games there, I would back that wager on day 1 here, the wild card games. Got the Blue Jays take on the Rays here, game 1. Like I mentioned, Rays obviously hefty favorites in game 1. 7.5 is the total. Shoemaker and Snell on the mound. So, Steve, they decided to go to Shoemaker here in game 1. The Blue Jays. Ryu will pitch tomorrow. We've seen that in a couple other scenarios already, and we've seen that in the past, of course, before trying to get those matchups. I've already said on the show that I like overs today. Besides that first one, I think that we could. No matter which way it goes, I think we could possibly see a 3-1 to the over here. And, this Blue Jays team, they battle. Look at the past 3 weeks for them. No matter who they've been playing, they've been involved in some high-scoring games. We don't even see 7.5 as totals with this team that often. Obviously, Snell's a talented guy here. Where do you see this game landing total-wise? And obviously, as a side play, what are you thinking with this number for the Rays?
Yeah, it's the third straight game here that's at 7.5, and obviously 7 a very key number. So I lean towards the over those first 2 daytime games over the 7.5s. I would have liked the 7 a lot better, but I'm not getting it. But here I'm not as keen on the over, especially at 7.5. I think Snell could have a really good outing. Not big on Shoemaker though, so the over could definitely get there because I got Shoemaker rated very mediocre. I've got him with those other pitchers we talked about today. I've got Snell way ahead of all of them. And the big question for me, guys, just big picture, is, Tampa, they didn't have much to play for down the stretch, yet they kept playing hard. They won 4 straight, 5 of their last 6. So I'm not too worried about them having to turn things back on, as you often see with these teams that, clinch early. Meanwhile, the Blue Jays, 6-2 their last 8, basically just to make the playoffs. I think the big question is, does that momentum carry in? The fact that Tampa's played well all season, the fact they're in the same division, they've played the same opponents, I think their 40-20 record's legit. And by the way, they had 30 games against above 500 teams, half their schedule. Yeah. We talked about how Oakland had only 6, and they went, by the way, 21-9 in those games. They're just good across the field. They're good offensively, they're good defensively, they're good pitching, but they're not a real explosive team. So this is one game I don't like the over quite as much, Andrew.
Dave, we'll go to you here with this one.
Yeah, Shoemaker's interesting because I think the guy's a capable pitcher. But, I think Snell's better. And Shoemaker's pitched 3 or 4 innings over the last month. Mm-hmm. So you wonder how long he's going to be out there for. I'm thinking it's a 4 or 5 inning tops start for him, and then you're going to get into the bullpen, which is a little dicey in the Toronto side. It's not a terrible bullpen, but it's not a great bullpen either. Snell, the numbers are just solid. It's tough to find anything really strong to put your hat on, unless it's really small sample that you can find that's negative on Snell. Tampa's they're just clearly the better baseball team. I didn't want to lay up to $2. It's a big price, but I can't make a case for the dog, to be honest with you.
Is it fair to say, though, Dave, that this Blue Jays team has overachieved? Would you say that?
No, I mean, not necessarily. No, I hear you asked me the question, so I'll answer it. They're 12-15 against winning teams, so they haven't overachieved. They just won the games they were supposed to win, and they won enough of them to get in the playoffs. But that's the luxury of being in a division with the Red Sox, who didn't give a shit, and the Orioles, who were bad. And quite honestly, they caught the Yankees at the right time because the Yankees had half their roster when they had that series where Tampa dominated them. That's not to take anything away from Tampa, by the way. I think they're a legit baseball team. Mm-hmm. I think the Blue Jays are a good young squad, but I think their best days are ahead of them. And I just don't give much of a chance here. I think if they win one game in this series, they'll be doing well.
Yeah, we've talked about in-game betting before on this show, and I mentioned I like the over. I actually think that Dave was talking about with that A's game, betting the first 5 innings over here. I think if you're interested in an in-game wager today, it could be watching the first few innings of this one, seeing some shutdown baseball, and then grabbing an in-game over. I think that could be a good opportunity, and let the bullpens go to work. Let these guys grind it out later on into the game. Brian, we'll go to you here. I think it'll be an interesting series. I don't like this price here for the Rays. Snell on the mound, so obviously for good reason. If I'm playing the Jays, though, I'm waiting for tomorrow.
I don't like the price either. I'm like Dave. I can't make a case for Toronto. Keep in mind, Toronto's got a lot of young players who have never been in the playoffs before. That to me is a concern. Shoemaker, Dave pointed out in the last month, he's got 3 innings he pitched against the Yankees, and that was it. His last performance before that was a full month before that because of the injuries. Even when he was healthy this year, and he's a decent pitcher when he's healthy, he only threw 89 pitches for his longest outing on the season. I don't expect him to be out there long. Interesting to note, and this is probably the only year we see something like this, Shoemaker has 6 starts on the season. 3 of them were against Tampa Bay. This is the 4th time Tampa Bay has seen him. Now, the good news is he's pitched well against Tampa with game scores of 56, 50, and 64. Bad news is this will be the 4th time Tampa Bay has seen him. Tampa Bay is one of those teams that finds ways to win. You take a look at them on the season. I believe they're up 40 runs or something on the season. A nice number, not dominant like the Dodgers, but Steve talked about 1-run games. They're 14-5 in 1-run games. Teams that have a good back of the bullpen are going to win the 1-run games. That's why some teams struggle. But I like teams that win the 1-run games. That means they've shown that they have that ability, and you could trust them. I can't lay the 190 or whatever it is here, but what I'm going to hope for is live betting that somehow Toronto gets off to a lead in this game, and then I could come back and bet Tampa Bay at a much better number, knowing they've got the much better bullpen here and they've got more playoff experience.
Hey, Brian, that they're plus 60, by the way, and guess what? That's tied for 3rd best in Major League Baseball, the Braves and the White Sox. And we talked about the White Sox earlier, minus 110 to win the series. You've got a White Sox team, Andrew, at minus 110 versus Tampa minus 225 for their series, and they both were number 1 in the AL plus 60 margin this year. So just interesting, something to point out there.
See, Brian, as far as like the whole like nerves for this young team, I think that being young and having almost like the no pressure against them. Yeah. That's been the motto of this Jays team all year. And, some might say I'm sounding like a fan right now, but it's not that. It's that I see the most coverage of them based off where I live in the media and all that stuff. And I think that what I was saying earlier to Dave, which clearly he disagreed with me, was that the baseball is different as far as how they approach the at-bats, how the teams approach things. But I think as far as the atmosphere goes and as far as things go for nervousness, I don't see it. Look at the Miami Heat in the NBA Finals right now. They are not in the NBA Finals if they're not in the NBA bubble. I think that these guys, obviously there's going to be some nerves. These games do mean more, but in my personal opinion, I think they're just going out there and playing baseball a little bit more than they would have been if there was, absolutely stadium packed capacity crowds screaming their heads off, different type of banners, different type of this and that hyped up before the game starts. And I do buy into that quite a bit. So that's just my opinion. I think that obviously the players approach the at-bats differently. But the nervousness, I don't think it's not really there as much.
I didn't mean nervousness. I just meant that I think now everybody that's playing is going to treat it as a big game. It'll be managed that way, especially in these best of 3 series. It's going to be managed that way, and I think the atmosphere is more exciting for the teams involved. I mean, this is the playoffs. It's not just regular season, and I think that applies in every sport. The playoffs bring out the best in teams.
I said it off the top of the show. I mean, I'm more excited right now just to be handicapping these games and chatting with you guys because these games actually matter. Tired of talking about these bottom feeder teams and looking forward to these great matchups every single day. How about a segue for a great matchup here?
Here we go.
Yankees, Indians, Cole, Bieber, and I'm going to be a broken clock is the right place today, but this is kind of a repetitive guy here. Cole and Bieber on the mound. The total 6.5 though. I'm going over here. I think we could see some runs here, and we got some guys back and healthy. A healthy Yankees lineup is really important. and they've battled with that, you know. And it's I'm not a Yankees homer, and we've heard a lot of Yankees homers arguing about that and complaining. But health means a lot, and when they're healthy, it's just a matter of consistency now. They're healthy, but are they rusty? And I'm talking about guys like Stanton. What do you think here, side and total here, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, Yankees 2-6 to finish out the regular season. They obviously turned it on about a month ago when they started to get healthy. Didn't necessarily have much to play for. I think they realized they weren't going to catch Tampa. They were locked in. So I'm not reading too much into the 2-6 slide. I've liked Cleveland for months now. As you guys know, about a month and a half ago here in the show, I recommended them around 20-1 as a flyer for the World Series. I remember Matt Joseph around that time recommended Cincinnati that week. And I agree with the logic behind both of those selections because they're both strong pitching, mediocre hitting. But pitching is what wins in the postseason. We saw that, the Nationals had some hitting last year, but they had a stud rotation. That's why playoffs started last year. I was doing a national radio show. I recommend the Nationals at 25-1. I said, if they can get by the Brewers, and it wasn't looking that good in the play-in game, So it's the same here with the Indians. If they can get by the Yankees, who are a very dangerous team in a 3-game series, obviously. I think what's interesting here, Andrew, is that the Yankees are a slight favorite tonight, -115, yet the Indians are -115 in the series. And so, this is a very critical game for New York. If they don't win this game tonight, they're really behind the 8 ball. And the reason, of course, is because Cole's on the mound. Their stud is on the mound here, but Bieber pretty damn good also.
Oh, wow.
And 6.5 is an ugly number. First 5 inning 3. Have we seen that all year, guys, in a full game? I mean, basically, if you get to 2 runs or less, you win. So they get to 3 and 5 innings, you can't win that. So the total is tough here for that reason with the over. But I like the 6.5. I see where you're going with that, Andrew. It's much prettier number than 7.5 like the other games. But Cleveland's a play-on team for me, but this is a tough game for him tonight.
Let me ask you, Steve, if you already kind of touched on it a little bit, but if the Indians win this game, how many runs are they scoring?
Well, one of my favorite stats all season, I haven't updated it the last couple of weeks, but was that, when the Indians scored 3 or more, I think they started off the year like 19-2. They were 21-4 at one point going into September. They don't need many runs. That's exactly right. And a low-scoring game in the under, you could say, is somewhat correlated probably, whereas the Yankees in the over probably somewhat correlated for that reason as well.
Dave Koken.
Well, so here's the game as far as the 4 today are scheduled. This is the marquee matchup. It's the first ever playoff start for Bieber. And if Shane Bieber shows up, good luck to the Yankees because his stuff is almost unhittable. But in the first ever playoff game against the franchise, I hate saying that because I don't like the Yankees, obviously. But, let's hope he doesn't turn into Justin Bieber because this is some lineup he's facing. And it is a different scenario in the playoffs as opposed to the regular season. Cole, of course, has a wealth of postseason experience. I think this is the 11th postseason start. And he's a tough guy to go against. I don't know what to do with the game. I think it is going to live up to expectations as far as the pitchers are concerned. But I'm not playing under 6.5 because these, especially the Yankees offense is capable of, if 2 guys get on, you can see 3 runs on the board in a hurry. I give
Dave,
Bieber
how long
the
does
edge.
Bieber last in this game?
As long as he can go. As long as he can go. It's as simple as that. If he has to throw 115 pitches, he'll be out there for 115 pitches. They want him for as close to 9 innings as they can get. The Yankees are going to take the approach of being patient at the plate. They're going to try and get that pitch count up in the early innings so that he's out of there by the 6th or 7th inning. I think the pitching matchup slightly favors Bieber, but the offense is just I hesitate to use the word, but I think it is an overwhelming edge for the Yankees as far as that goes. And so I have to lean to the Yankees. But one thing to keep in mind, Yankees don't have a very good record against winning teams this year.
No.
So they really feasted on some of the stiffs. Against the winning teams, is my writing correct? 10-17, is that right?
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But then again,
Ain't real good.
a lot
It's
of
not real
injuries,
good.
of course, too. Though that's what's so tricky about those numbers, Dave, is that they had such a half lineup for so much of the season.
Yeah, I know. But still, if you bet the Yankees every game against winning teams, especially considering the Yankees, you lost a lot of money. Mm-hmm. So I can't come up with a play on this game. This is the way I want to watch this game more than any of the others because I think it's the best matchup on the board. But I just can't figure out anything to even give as a lean. So I'll leave that to you guys.
Dave, remember at the start of the year when we were chatting and we would talk about which teams really care about, really achieving a high number of wins and getting that number,
Right.
which teams care about getting to the playoffs. And it's funny because I heard you mention countless times over the past 2 or 3 weeks, this team, they've counted it out. They're throwing out guys that we've never heard of. I love that line that you were using. And now it's interesting because this is the biggest point, like Steve said, the injuries, and it's a different team. But you throw that out. You bet the money line on this Yankees team every time they're playing a team with a winning record. Good luck with that this year.
Yep.
So that again,
but there's a flip side on that, and that is one of the comments we also made early in the season was the Yankees don't care about the regular season. They just want to get through the 60 games, and they'll start playing when the playoffs begin. And I am worried about that because on paper this is a scary good baseball team.
Yeah, Brian, I asked Dave that question about how long Bieber lasts, and of course, the answer is kind of what I expected, as long as he can, and then followed up by what I really think is that, they're going to be grinding out the at-bats, making him work as much as he can. They're going to play it smart. We talk about the approach of baseball these days and going for that long shot, but I think they'll be smart at the plate, Brian, and 6.5 to me is low.
I would disagree a little bit.
I love that start. I don't know.
Yeah, well, the Yankees are going to try. Everybody tries to make him work, but he's like leads the league in swing and miss. So you can have that in your head, but doing it is a lot harder than what you're planning on it. Normally, if you were to play under 6.5 and 7 in the playoffs, you lose. It's the numbers show that it's a bad bet. But if you included Cole pitching to Higashioka, or however I must pronounce his name, but he's pitched with him 4 times. He's got a 1-run ERA. He likes pitching to him as opposed to the other catchers that the Yankees have. The problem is he could be the worst hitter in Major League Baseball. So you've got as bad as Sanchez has been this year, you always got the chance that he's just going to get up and hit a bad pitch for a home run. You're not going to get that out of this guy. So you're going to get a full game of a bad hitter in that spot. And if you look at the Yankees lineup, sure, Stanton and Judge are back, but neither one of them are hitting very well. The only guys that are doing anything for the Yankees right now, Frazier has been solid. LeMahieu has been terrific. Urshela and Vogt are playing pretty well. But, the big name guys are not in playing shape right now. They're not doing well. And that's a concern for me. And when you take a look at the bullpens in this game, we all know what can happen with the Yankees bullpen. They didn't have as good a year as they normally do, but they'll be there for the playoffs. And the Indians bullpen has been, if not the best in baseball, the second best in baseball or third best. They've been terrific from the back end. So this is one of the few games that I think the under is the right play, even though it is at 6.5 here. You can't get 2 better starting pitchers to go, and it's hard to find too many bullpens that are as good from top to bottom as this one is. The Indians just announced today that Plutko is not on the playoff roster here. They brought in Zimmer. Zimmer's a guy that is going to steal some bases from you. I'm sure that's exactly what they're bringing him in there for. But taking away Plutko gives us a better chance in the longer innings to middle relievers. We've got better guys than him out there, so I'm glad that he's not even an afterthought. But I think the under here is the way to go. And I actually like the Indians a little bit in this matchup. As was mentioned, the Yankees have not played well against good teams. And the Indians, for many years, the Yankees intimidated them. They don't intimidate them anymore. We've talked about Minnesota earlier. We didn't talk about the Oakland A's against the Yankees. The Yankees have intimidated a lot of teams in the playoffs. The Indians are one of those teams that they have not. And the Yankees coming into the season, I thought were number 1, number 2 behind the Dodgers. I haven't seen enough out of the Yankees. Now, you could say all you want that they didn't enter these games to try to win every game. You're a professional athlete. You're trying to win every game. I like the Indians in the under here.
Hey, Brian, let me ask you, as an Indians fan, Indians minus 105, or actually plus 105 this game, minus 115 series, though. So you must like the Indians in the series as well then, huh?
I didn't do any series bets, but the Indians, you take a look at the starting pitchers they have. They haven't done well against the second pitcher going for the Yankees tomorrow. Can't think of his name outside. The Asian pitcher, Tanaka. The Indians haven't fared well against him in the past, but as we've talked about earlier this season, if you watch the pitches on the inside and the outside of the plate, those pitchers are getting the calls. That's the calls. That's the Beavers. Tanaka deals so much down low this season. It's going to hurt him with the way the games are called, the strike zones are called. That's going to be an effect in that game because normally people just swing for those low pitches all the time. This year, they think they can wait him out a little bit more. So, I do like the
He has a history, though, in the playoffs. Masahiro Tanaka has
he's tough.
history of success in the playoffs.
The strike zone hasn't been the same this year.
Oh, it's been all over the place. That's for sure. And Brian, I think it's really interesting because, like I said, we'll wrap things up here in a second, but it's so interesting. We can only handicap based off what we've seen, which is what it sounds like what you're saying here with that Yankees team. And then we hear Dave say, how much stronger on paper this lineup really is. So it sounds like for you, it's, will it come in fruition? Like, will these guys show up? The only thing for me I remember is that early in the season at the midway point, we saw Judge, if there was a tie game or they were down 1 run, down 2 runs, who's there to get that big hit? Who's there to get that big home run when it matters? And, like you said, I always say that same thing you say. The professional athletes, they want to win. I use that in every other sport besides baseball because I feel like they do want to win, but sometimes they care just a little bit less. With Tanaka on the mound, though, I think it's Cleveland's game to win today because I think Yankees look pretty good tomorrow. Not to discredit Cole at all, though, either. 4 great games today. Go ahead, Brian.
I was just wondering, you said sometimes they don't care. Have you ever put out a play that you didn't care? I mean, this is what we do for a living. That's what they do for a living. We only put out the plays we think are going to win or have an advantage if you're playing a big underdog higher than what the number's telling you. That's what we do. None of us put out a play we don't think we can win. The Yankees are a team. If the Yankees are healthy and in midseason form, it wouldn't surprise me if the Yankees sweep. But they're not, and I can only go by what is happening right now.
I'm just saying, if LeBron's playing the Detroit Pistons, he's not getting up for that game as much as he is if he's playing the LA Clippers. We can agree on that.
He still wants to win.
But he still want to.
The great ones, they hate losing.
Yeah. And I think in the era that you guys grew up in, I would agree with that. But in my era, unfortunately, it's just how many guys in every single sport now are resting? I'm taking the day off.
That's got nothing to do with the player. But that's not the player.
It's the mentality.
That's not the player. That's the staff doing it. Okay, the players want to play every game.
That does it for our show today. 4 great games. We'll be back tomorrow, usual time here. Thank you all for watching. We had over, I think, 550, 600 people close to in this chat box. If you're watching this live or if you're watching this archived, hit the like button, comment. Always comment live on this video. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know who you think's going to win. Total, side bet, props, whatever you're thinking. You can find Brian, Dave, Steve, myself, all at WagerTalk.com. Guys, baseball plays $9 today. $9 Monday has been extended. I have a 5% play up. These guys all have packages up. Good luck. First pitch is heading off in here in just a couple minutes. Guys, Dave, Steve, Brian, we'll see you tomorrow. Best of luck.